Hello guys, I am Paul McWhorter with ExtremePreppers.com, and today we are going to be talking about Bitcoin. And maybe you've read a lot about Bitcoin and maybe you've gotten excited about it. And the question I want to answer today is Bitcoin real money? All right, because I think that among the prepping and homesteading community, there's kind of a wide view of skepticism about paper money. And if we're concerned about the concept of a fiat currency system, we're always interested in finding something that is real money. Now, I really hope you guys watched my video from last week, which was called A Must Watch, Understanding Money. If you haven't seen that one yet, you might go to my channel and watch it, because we sort of talk about in that video what is real money. And if you haven't seen it, let me just kind of summarize it. I went through a pretty in-depth analysis of the characteristics of real money. One thing is real money needs to be universally viewed as having value. There needs to be this universal view that the money has intrinsic value. There's intrinsic value associated with what we call money. It needs to have a long shelf life. It needs to be something that doesn't go bad. You know, eggs aren't money because they go bad after a few days. Have intrinsic value, they go bad, so they're not money. Needs to be available in small units of exchange or something that is divisible so that you can make small transactions. You can buy a loaf of bread. Needs to be something that doesn't cost you anything to own. You don't want your money to cost you money, because what you're trying to do with money is you're trying to take value. You're trying to take the value of the hours that you work and move it into the future, and you don't want it to get eaten up as it sits there. So you want money to not cost you anything to own. You don't want money to take any work to keep. And so, you know, chickens aren't money because it takes work to keep chickens, and so they might be valuable, but they're not money. And then it needs to be something that can have a dense value. So like if you want to buy an acre of land, you don't want to have 6 trucks to take your money to buy the land. And then finally, there needs to be some element of scarcity. The scarcity needs to be there because you need something that continues to be sought after. And if we said rocks were money, rocks aren't scarce, you could just go out and pick it up. And so I think that's a pretty good indication of what the characteristics are of real money or true money. Most of us recognize that this is fake money. It's not true money because it's not scarce. They can print as much of it as they want. It's not universally viewed as having value. More and more people are trying to, in world exchanges, trying to get away from the US dollar. Long shelf life, or does it preserve its value? Not very well, right? When in 1970 I could get a haircut for $1. Today a haircut costs me $20. No, it's not. You know, it's not meeting this. This thing is no longer really meeting my needs as dollars. Don't need to go into all that. Probably most of you have that idea, or have an understanding of the things to be nervous about paper currency or fake money. Well, you have the concern, but then always the question is, what do we do? So then what, right? We know that the paper money is somewhat suspect, but what do we do about that? Where do we go? Well, one of the things that generates a lot of excitement is Bitcoin. And a little bit about the Bitcoin. It's a cryptocurrency, and the idea behind it is that slowly new Bitcoins will be generated, but it's not like paper. You can't just have somebody arbitrarily flip a switch and print a billion or a trillion of them. The way Bitcoin works is, I guess I would describe it like this if you're not familiar with it. It's sort of like they set up a really hard riddle or a really hard computer problem, and that problem gets harder and harder and harder. So if you had a computer, you could write a program and it would solve this little math problem, and the first Bitcoin was fairly easy to find, but the second Bitcoin was like twice as hard to find as the first one, and the third one twice again as hard. And so initially Bitcoins came on the market, which was good because then they're liquid, right? There's enough of them for people to be interested in. But as time goes on, it gets harder and harder and harder to find a Bitcoin. So maybe initially, if you had a computer and let it run for a week, it would find a Bitcoin. But now if you had a massive data bank of computers, like a room full of servers, high-end computers, they would have to search and search and search and search to find Bitcoins. And so the thing about Bitcoin is, yes, they are intrinsically scarce, and they're scarce mathematically because this problem, this math problem that was set up that would automatically, kind of in a clever way, be harder and harder and harder. And so there will ever be fewer and fewer and fewer Bitcoins to be found, and then finally it caps it on a certain number. So the number of Bitcoins is scarce, is limited. So the characteristic of real money, one of the characteristics that we're looking for of scarcity, yes, the Bitcoin is scarce. We want also, I'm kind of going backwards through the list, in real money, we want something that has a dense value, something that you could carry a lot of value in a small amount of space. And Bitcoin is kind of the ultimate, because you could carry $1 billion with just a little number written on a piece of paper, a number that's in your head. So yes, very, very dense store of value. You want something that doesn't cost you anything to own, and you could argue that that's true of Bitcoin, because it's not charging you anything. You're not having to pay for a vault to store your Bitcoin in. It's just remembering the password to access the Bitcoin you have. You want something that's no work to own. Okay, you could argue that for Bitcoin, available in small units of exchange. Little bit of a problem now with Bitcoin is probably $600 to $1,000 right now for a Bitcoin. Little bit of a problem there. You got to sell a Bitcoin for $1,000 or $800 or $600, whatever, and then go take that currency. So a little bit of a problem there with divisibility. Long shelf life, not going to go away. So you look at that, and all of that starts looking like, maybe Bitcoin is a way for us to get away from this and get to an honest real money. Okay, so let's say we had 10 things on the list of real money, but the problem is when you come to number 1, it needs to have intrinsic value. Real money has intrinsic value. Like an egg, one aspect of it has intrinsic value, because if nothing else, I could eat the egg. Okay, real money needs to have intrinsic value. And Bitcoin has no intrinsic money. It's totally abstract. It's this idea out there. Now, it could be that it would almost become universally accepted, but even if it does, it still has no intrinsic value, and you have to see that. And this is the thing that you have to get your head around. Yes, Bitcoin itself is scarce. Bitcoin itself has this rarity factor, because you can only slowly generate them, and then you get to the point that there will be no more Bitcoins generated, and there's a fixed amount. Okay, so yeah, they're scarce, but no, there's no intrinsic value to them. And this is the risk of Bitcoin. There's really 2 primary risks of Bitcoin. And that is that when we get comfortable with this idea of Bitcoin, then somebody, and there's never going to be any more Bitcoin, so yeah, they're rare, they're scarce, but there's nothing that keeps anyone from generating a new cryptocurrency, and maybe even a better cryptocurrency. Let's say right now the problem is the Bitcoin is not divisible. You get down to this fundamental unit and you can't divide it smaller, so you end up with something that's too valuable. Well, I come up with a new cryptocurrency, and mine is a micro cryptocurrency where you have fractional coins that can go down to very small values, and I can be trading on the exchange or making very precise and very small, very divisible transactions. And then what if I created something that let people get into it? Like imagine, like you have this thing called Steemit that seems to be generating a new type of cryptocurrency. And if I make posts on Steemit, then I can get things. And so all of a sudden, man, I can't get a Bitcoin because it's $1,000, but I can go over to Steemit, and all of a sudden everybody starts doing that. And then all of a sudden, nobody says that Bitcoin is going to be the cryptocurrency to use in the future, and it gets stale and it's not cool anymore, and it's worth nothing at that point. Let's think about, cryptocurrency is sort of like social media, okay? Think of it like social media. Remember back in the day there was MySpace and everybody was on MySpace. And then remember how garish the MySpace pages were, and while everybody was using MySpace for their social media, it became like ugly and clunky and slow and bloated and all of those crazy garish colors that were on there. Then all of a sudden Facebook came out and it had neat, clean pages, and it was the cool thing to be on Facebook, because the only way you could be on Facebook, I can't remember if it was Harvard or Cornell, unless you were a student there, you couldn't be on Facebook, and so it was exclusive. And then they let another school in, and then all of a sudden everybody's on Facebook, and it's the cool thing. Well, then all of a sudden Facebook, when your grandmother started using Facebook, it wasn't so cool anymore, so we started going to Instagram, and that was the cool thing. And then now all of a sudden the super cool thing is Snapchat. And you see how you evolve over time in social media? Why is the same thing not going to happen on Bitcoin, right? How many people do you know that use MySpace anymore? In 10 years, how do you know how many people are going to be using Bitcoin? Okay, so like if I could imagine like Bitcoin, there might be some scenario where you could use Bitcoin as a means of some sort of transaction. Maybe it would have some sort of unique feature that would make it useful to you to conduct some sort of transactions. But man, if you're thinking of this as real money, as something that allows you to transfer wealth or to transfer value for your hours worked into the future, there might not be any more Bitcoins generated. Bitcoins might be scarce, but there could be 1,000 cryptocurrencies, and who knows which one is actually going to be used. What if somebody created a cryptocurrency that was somehow tied to gold, that there's this vault, and they figure out this foolproof way that when you buy this cryptocurrency of gold bits or something like that, that all of a sudden it's tied to something of intrinsic value, or let's say that you had some piece of property and it's divided up into a cryptocurrency, and there's this real asset that is somehow tied to the currency. So guys, I gotta say, I don't give financial advice, but what I'm saying is I'm staying away from Bitcoin because of all the things that it does and all of the issues of the paper dollar that it overcomes. The fundamental issue is there is no intrinsic value to Bitcoin. No intrinsic value. There's nothing that keeps 100 cryptocurrencies to come along and one of them totally displace Bitcoin. So if you're playing in Bitcoin, you should think of it as speculation or as gambling. Who knows? Bitcoin might be $5,000 a coin in a few months. Who knows? But what you got to do is you got to view it as speculation. So in my mind, we're talking about real money. Is Bitcoin real money? I'm going to say no. Bitcoin is not real money. I'm staying away from it. I don't give financial advice as to what you should do. What I'm saying is I don't view it as real money, and I'm not going to be playing the Bitcoin game. I would love to hear your opinion, particularly if you have a different view of it. I'd like to know your thoughts. If you like this video, think about giving us a thumbs up, think about subscribing, think about sharing it with other people. I'm Paul McWhorter with ExtremePreppers.com, and I will talk to you guys later.